You came prepared for a real conversation, and within 5 minutes, the room felt wrong. Nobody was trying to change anything. You built the argument, the analysis, the numbers, the case for why the direction was wrong, or the risk was real, or the decision needed more time. You arrived ready for a discussion. And within 5 minutes, you knew. Not because anything was said, because nothing was being tested anymore. The questions had narrowed, people had stopped exploring and started coordinating. I sat down in a board-level program meeting, prepared for an argument the room had already finished having. And within 5 minutes I knew the conversation I'd prepared for wasn't happening. The discussion existed to make the outcome safe enough to say out loud, not to determine what the outcome would be. And that meeting cost millions. The decision that drove it had already been made before I arrived. I've been inside these rooms. I know what they cost. And here's what I mean. Heavyweight judo final, older player, physically stronger than me by a significant margin. We were gripping before anything started. Standard sleeve and lapel. Nothing dramatic from the outside. But the instant I touched him properly, I felt something wrong. Not weakness, commitment. Too much weight through the front of his feet, too much certainty in the grip. His arms were working harder than the position required. And once you feel that through your hands, something changes. Your body starts moving before your thoughts organize themselves into language. You stop thinking about techniques and start feeling direction. His weight wasn't alive anymore. It was planted, heavy, fixed, certain. And from the outside, nothing had happened yet. No throw, no attack, no movement big enough for the crowd to react to. But inside the grip, the exchange was already over. Because once someone commits their weight too early, they stop adapting. They stop reading. They're holding a position instead of responding to one. I stepped across, felt the resistance arrive a fraction too late, and the throw took almost no effort at all. The unsettling part comes afterward. Your mind catches up and realizes the throw wasn't the decisive moment. The second his weight settled, that was. The throw was just what followed. Now, most people think decisions are made through argument, through evidence, through the quality of the case. They're not. By the time the argument is being made, the outcome has usually already formed. Analysis gets assembled afterwards to justify a direction that settled emotionally before anyone spoke. You're not changing minds, you're watching minds that have already changed, explain themselves. But here's what that also means. The people with the most leverage aren't the ones with the strongest argument. They're the ones who recognize whether the decision is still movable before everyone else does. And that's not emotional intelligence, that's positional intelligence. And it changes everything about how you enter a conversation. Now let me show you a version that has nothing to do with the boardroom. Two people, a conversation that's supposed to be about the future. One of them arrived prepared, explanations ready, honesty ready, maybe even negotiation ready. The other person already knows what they're going to do. They're just waiting for the conversation to become emotionally survivable enough to say it out loud. And you can feel it almost immediately. The questions aren't real questions anymore. The curiosity is gone. The pauses are different. The calm is rehearsed. And there's a strange absence of resistance, the kind that would be there if the outcome were genuinely still open. And what people remember years later isn't the conversation itself. It's the realization, the moment they understood they weren't inside a conversation anymore. They were inside the formal announcement of something that had already happened weeks earlier. You weren't there for the decision. You were there for the delivery. They weren't exploring possibilities with you. They were managing your reaction to a decision already made. And this isn't a failure of intelligence. Intelligent people do this constantly. You prepared for the announcement, not for the moment when the announcement was still being written. The meeting is not where the decision happens. It is the room where everyone agrees it did. And you've spent your life inside conversations that existed to manage your reaction to decisions that finished before you arrived. Every institution does this. Every relationship eventually produces a version of it. The visible conversation is the last stage of a process that began somewhere you weren't. The question isn't whether this happens. The question is whether you can feel it before the weight settles, and whether anything is still movable when you do. So by the time people enter a conversation, someone has already decided what feels safe. Someone else has decided what protects their position. Someone has already sensed which direction things want to move and started adjusting towards it. You can feel it early if you know what to look for. Language hardens. Objections become performative. People stop trying to widen the discussion and start managing their distance from the direction already forming. Sentences get safer. The question nobody asks is the one that would reopen everything. And look, the dangerous part. Most intelligent people believe decisions are made through analysis. In reality, analysis is often assembled afterward to justify a direction the conversation settled on emotionally first. The outcome forms before the reasoning catches up. And preparation doesn't reduce the cost, it transfers it. Now, I've been working on something around this for several years. Law 7. Don't make big moves on thin information. Small moves preserve options. Big moves remove them. The mistake isn't walking in unprepared. It's committing the full position, the formal ask, the irreversible move, before you felt where the weight is sitting. The person who tables everything before reading the conversation has committed before they know what they've committed into. Small moves first. Feel whether things are still in motion. Then decide whether the window is still open. Because sometimes it is. In judo, timing isn't about speed. It's about reading. You don't manufacture the moment. You wait until the opponent is already moving and act then. The throw that costs nothing is the one that arrives when the weight has already shifted, and not because you forced it, because you waited until you could feel which way it was going. Commit before that moment, and you're fighting the weight. Wait for it, and the weight does the work. So here's the test. Before you make the big move in any conversation, one question. Is the weight still alive? If language is hardening, if curiosity has left, if people are managing optics instead of testing truth, the weight has settled. You're inside the announcement, not the decision. But if the questions are still real, if there's genuine friction rather than performed friction, if the conversation is still adjusting rather than coordinating, the decision hasn't been made yet, which means the exchange isn't over. So, you came prepared, the argument was strong, the numbers were right. None of that was the problem. The problem was the weight had already settled before you arrived. Not through conspiracy, not through bad faith. Someone had decided what felt safe, and the conversation had moved towards it. The conversation wasn't where the decision happened. It was where the decision became safe enough to say out loud. Weight that's planted can be felt. Weight that's still alive can be moved. The window is only closed if you don't know what you're looking for.